As a painter back in the early 90s, you could make $500, $800 a day. Not now. So I'm going to talk to you guys about how that we used to do that kind of thing and what's changed in the industry. And this is my paint car, believe it or not, when I go long distances, which I go 400 or 500 miles sometimes to do jobs, and I get paid enough to do it. So don't think I don't. Well, painting houses and making $500, $800 back then was a lot of money, and today you might still make $500 a day painting, but you're working your ass off. And we used to do it, start at 8 o'clock in the morning, be done by 1:30, and we do that all the time. It was just no problem. Painting interiors especially, and you wouldn't get much money for an interior, but it wasn't worth much money. Now you get no money for an interior, and it's worth a lot more than what guys are charging, because you're doing all these custom paint colors, baseboards one color, walls another color, door jambs painted white or whatever, ceilings white, all this stuff that we didn't do back then. I'll tell you guys what we did back then. It's way different than they do now. And one of the things was everybody, a lot of houses were either one of two things. They were either Navajo white, or they were Swiss coffee, or Old Quaker 101, if you guys know Old Quaker paints, which was Old Quaker's Swiss coffee. I think it was 101. 105 was their Navajo white. And if you did a repaint, you could get that color. You could just look at the walls, and if you were really good at knowing those colors, you'd have a little sample. You put it on the door jamb, make sure it matched perfect, and then figure out what they were using, and then use exactly the same material and repaint the house. So I'll tell you how we did it. Everything was one color. Your walls, your ceilings, your baseboards, everything was flat on the walls. All the kitchens, bathrooms, all were enamel. And you just set up your airless and spray all the walls. Of course, we're using a flat tip. Use one of these here with a nice flat tip. Of course, we had tip guards or whatever. This one doesn't have one. But you'd have a nice flat tip set up, one of these little bitty things here, and not this reverse of garbage. And we would paint one guy would use a flat tip, paint all the walls. Here's what a reverse it looks like, if you guys didn't know. That's reverse a tip. These are pretty cool for ceilings with this yellow tip. Really nice. I have a video out on that. But we'd paint all the walls in the house. One guy would go in, start spraying. One guy would go in and have a 9-inch roller set up with a 1/2-inch nap, and we would go through, and first thing we do, this is with water base. With oil base, you have to do it the opposite. You have to cut in first. That's where all that stuff came from. Everybody goes, cut before you roll. That's because oil base, you had to cut in before you roll. Why? Because if you cut in first, if you cut in after you rolled, what would happen is your brush, when you hit the roll area where it was already starting to set up a little bit, would be really sticky and it'd drag. And that's why people said cut before you roll. So you cut in first and then roll it. With water base, you could roll first. It really makes no difference whether you cut first before you roll, or roll before you cut with water base. So you guys that are old school, really old school, that only use oil base, and you started to switch over to using water at some point, you know, you always cut before you roll. Not necessary. We knew that you didn't need to do that. So one guy spraying, doing the walls, and he would just get a little on the door jamb. That's fine. It would stick fine. And spray all the walls in the whole house. Spray all the walls in the whole house. Especially with the old Navajo white, it would just cover anything. Marks, whatever. And if you're using Old Quaker, you could just blend it into the other stuff if it was the same color. You didn't even need to paint the whole wall a lot of times. You could just blend it up into it, and it would look perfect. You couldn't even see where you stopped, started, nothing. That is if you got your color matched. If you had the right color, if it was Old Quaker 105, it was real easy. You'd know right away that it was just going to look perfect when you're done. So you had one guy working the enamel, one guy working the flat, and then after you were all done, after he was all done spraying, which would take about 3 to 4 hours, you get into the enamel and help you guys work it out. So the guy doing the enamel, I go through. I was the enamel guy. The other guy was a spray guy. Back in the 90s, I was young. So I would roll out the kitchen, the bathroom. If there was a laundry room, I'd roll that out. I'd do all my roll work. I'd go through the whole house with the roller, and I would do kitchens, bathrooms, laundry room, all the roller work first. Okay, I go through, roll everything. And that way, what I would know is if I was in the corners, if I rolled it real tight, sometimes I barely need to do anything with the brush. Just run the brush through the corners. It was a lot faster to roll first. Because again, I was doing the kitchen, the ceilings, the walls, everything were the same color. You just go through, roll everything, roll all the stuff out, roll it all out with a 1/2 inch nap roller. You say, why use a 1/2 inch nap roller? Covers a little bit better, especially when you get to the doors, because you're going to do all the doors after you're done with all that. Okay, same roller. I remember back then we were doing the houses. It was charging about $1,200. Paint was about $175. About a 5 of paint, maybe 7 gallons of flat, and I think 2 or 3 gallons of enamel. Enamel we were paying about $7 for, and for decent enamel. A flat was, I don't know, it was like $35 a 5, something like that. So it wasn't much. And then you buy a couple extra gallons of flat, because usually you use about 7 gallons. Because that flat, you could add about 2 gallons of water and still cover really good. This is cheap vinyl flat. This was a touch-up repaint. These were rental houses. These were people just moving in. They wanted it cleaned up before they moved in. It didn't cost them much money. Now you got to spend $4,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 to have your house painted. It's crazy. It could be done for a lot less if you just did it all one color. But now that there's colors all over the damn walls and you got to cover all that stuff up, it's still costs you a ton of money to paint it all back white again, or Swiss coffee, or even Navajo white. It's still going to cost you quite a bit of money to get all that coverage done. Where back then we were just doing the same over same, making it fresh, going through and doing it that way. I remember one time we had a really long rainstorm and we were like broke, okay? And I remember doing a whole interior for $375 just to make $100 as an enamel painter. And, you know, he made $175, and we had half the paint left over, and we just sprayed and blended the walls. Didn't even paint the whole walls in the place, just touched it all up. Customer was super happy because he didn't have a lot of money, and we were just wanting money for food. I mean, we had like 3 or 4 weeks of no work, so we could do that, and you could make money even then. Not now. So after it was all done, rolling all the walls in the house, I'd go back with a brush and I'd cut in, and I cut in what I needed to. So if my corners were real tight, if I did a real tight job rolling where I got the roller right up in the corner, all I had to do is just streak the brush through the middle of it. Covered great, looked good, especially with your old Navajo white. It covered anything. And then you go through and get behind the toilet, get all that other stuff you couldn't get with the roller, cut around the shower, cut around all the cabinets in the kitchen, cabinets in the bathroom, all that stuff you just cut in, blow through it. And if you were tight, you just reduce that paint just a little bit so that brush would go a little bit further if it's still covered. You know, and we go through the whole house, boom, 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 be done. It took me, I think, about 3 hours or so to do, 3.5 hours to do 2 kitchens, bathrooms, and 3 bathrooms, you know, 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, or sometimes 2 bathrooms, 1 kitchen, 2 bathrooms, and a laundry room, or 3 bathrooms. You know, some of those were big master baths, and kitchen and 2 bathrooms, or 3 bathrooms and a kitchen, and no laundry room. Okay, sometimes you had a few houses, they had 2,800 to 3,000 plus square foot, and it would take 2 days. I'm talking about the 2,000 square foot or less house, two-story too. And some of them even had painted wrought iron railings going up and down. Yeah, we'd paint all that too. This was, again, wrought iron on the stairs if you had it. They had those little runners down the staircase where the wrought iron was. It was all painted. We do all that. That was all done by hand with a roller, fine roller. And we do all the doors. So once the spray man got done with all the walls, what he'd do is clean up the rig and then get a brush in the flat, okay, and go through, touch up anything that bled through with that, because it would just touch right up with that flat, with that dead flat that they used back then. And you could just go through and just bam, 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 hit all the bad areas with the brush. And then at the same time, he'd have an enamel brush going, and he'd start helping me with the doors. So one of us would go through, or he might grab the roller and start just rolling all the doors. Okay, then I would take that roller after all the doors were done, and I just run the jamb. I just run up the door jamb. I just take the roller, just smash it in the jamb, run it up the jamb like this, just run it up and down, get paint on the whole jamb. Okay, same way you do a lot of times now, and then just dip your brush really fast. You got to be fast to do this, because once that enamel starts to set up, it'll make a heavy brush mark and it'll look like crap. So we just jump right in the enamel and just boom, 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 just start getting that paint on, lay it all off with a brush. Everything, all the doors and frames were laid off with a brush. Back then they had the slab doors. They didn't have these recessed panel. That slows things down. So they had, we just roll out all the slab doors and just cut in around the handles, get no paint on the locks, and just cut in real tight around the handles. Just real tight. Just keep it real tight. You couldn't even see it. And there's no paint on the handles. No paint. None of that little edge of paint. We wouldn't do that. That was crap. That was joke painters that would do that, or they'd tape off the handle. We didn't need to. Just cut in nice and tight, go around the handle, boom, 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 you're done. So then all the doors were done. We just walked through the house. Both of us walked through the whole house. Hey, grab that spot over there, check all the touch up. 1:30, completely done. 1:30, 8 o'clock start, have our coffee, go out to breakfast usually. 1:30, done with the entire interior. Especially when those Navajo whites, boy, that was so easy. Just covered, go over it. Charged between $800 and $1,300. Paint was $150, $175. You made money back then. Now, you're busting your ass. You go through and paint the walls all 2 coats, ceilings all white, doors and frames white, like a white shadow. If somebody says they want pure white, I tell them, no, you don't get that. If you want that, have somebody else do it. You don't get pure white. We don't do that. It's white shadow, Swiss coffee on your doors and frames. That's all we do. And usually they'll go for it. Well, I want white. Well, have somebody else. Forget it. I'm not doing it today, okay? Because it's just too much time. 2-3 coats, and then, you know, after you leave, it looks like crap. You know what? As soon as you touch that pure white, it's got a mark in it. It looks like garbage. And then trying to cover that mark again, 2-3 coats, forget that. And it just doesn't look as good. So tell the customer that, and usually they'll be like, oh, okay. Nobody uses pure white. You know, even your windows on your house, like up there, put pure white next to that. It'll be so much brighter than the white that's on there. It's not pure white. White is different. We tell them that. You got to show your customer that stuff today. But you don't make the money you made back then, because you're doing all this stupid trim work and baseboards and door frames being different than the walls and the ceilings being different than the walls and all that extra work. And you don't get the money that we used to get for that. We could go through a house and boom, 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 knock it out and be done on an interior. You know, on the outside, same way we do it now. You know, we used to do them all. Spray the house, spray the trim, shield the eaves from the stucco. Half the time we didn't even have to cover the windows, and if we got any paint on them, we just carry a wet rag with us, wipe it all off, get it clean. You know, and people go, oh, well, you got paint on the windows. No. Are you kidding me? The guys that I work for, if there was a speck of paint on the window, a little speck, oh, he'd be screaming at you. Oh, just one little speck on there. You couldn't get any paint on the windows, and he didn't give you anything to cover them up with. You got a cardboard shield. He's like, what, can't you use a cardboard shield and set your pressure right? You better learn how to spray again, buddy. You're getting yelled at big time, big time. And you learn not to get paint on anything without covering it all. I watched my boss fire 68 guys when we were painting Montgomery Ward stores. 68 guys. They'd come in, they'd work for a day, and he'd be like, nah, don't show up tomorrow. I'd be like, oh shoot, come on, Frank. Come on, Frank. We're gonna do all this without, just that one guy was so much. He goes, nah, that guy's a piece of garbage. He's sitting there. I told him, you better not get paint on this and not get paint on that. He picked up my spray gun. Nah, he's fired. You learned not to get paint on anything, even when it wasn't covered. It's just, you just learned it. That was it. You can do it. People say, oh, you can't do that. No, it's because you don't know what we knew. Yes, you could. You could spray without having anything covered, and you better know how to work a shield, and you better know where that fan edge is, and you better be able to control your overspray, because we did, and that's the way it was. That's the way you had to do it. Okay? So, you guys say you can't do it. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So, anyway, interiors, that's how we did it. Exteriors is kind of how we did it then. And, yeah, you made a lot more money per day than you make now. You really did. You made a lot. I mean, for the time, if you add the inflation and other garbage that we have now, yeah, oh man, I make $500 a day. Yeah, that's like making $1,000 today. If you're making $1,000 a day as a spray man painting, that's pretty good money. Back then, $500, that was like $1,000 or more, maybe $1,500 today. So anyway, talk to you later on the next video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and talk to you in the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe.